Take her to sea, Mr. Murdoch. Let's stretch her legs. Yes, sir. Welcome. Let me start right off the bat with an admission. No, I didn't kidnap the Lindbergh baby, and I guess that probably doesn't matter, as you probably have no idea what I'm talking about anyway. No, with this episode, I'm breaking one of my fundamental rules. However, to understand the rule, you need to understand the need for it. Making in-depth mod showcase videos is very different from making lightweight highlight reel types of mod videos. One of the key differences is that since I'm trying to hit everything, or at least most everything that's in the mod, I kind of sort of want the mod to be feature complete and stable, or else my video would rapidly become stale and irrelevant as they make changes and additions to the mod. Maybe in a month or two, maybe in a week, maybe even later that day. So, to prevent the problem of trying to hit a moving target, I usually wait until the target stops moving, which is to say that the mod's stable and all the bits are in place and the updates aren't flying out every day or even every week or month, and thus the video will remain relevant longer. But yeah, I'm not doing that this time. Let me tell you how I got here, and that requires a little more backstory. Now, if you've been watching this series, you may remember that a couple episodes back, I completed the video about the small ships mod. That went out and it got some pretty positive buzz, but then I posted a link to it on the Discord server for the mod, and almost immediately a mod developer named Aleki reached out to me with a link to their mod. So I took a look and I was impressed. I mean, I was really impressed. And because I found the mod so impressive, I then wondered why I hadn't heard of this mod. I mean, yeah, I am kind of a digital hermit, but I'm not that much of a digital hermit. So I checked the number of downloads and it was tiny. And then I checked the creation date and found that it was less than a week old. So yeah, that's why. But after half an hour of playing with the mod, I added it to the mix for my next series, and I contacted Aleki to let them know that I wanted to make a video about this mod. And with their gracious assistance, here I am. So today, I want to talk to you about Aleki's Nifty Ships mod, version 1.0.10 for Minecraft 1.20.1. On the surface, this would appear to be almost a clone of small ships, and yeah, there is a lot of overlap. Both have, or will have, a number of different ship models and sizes, and the ships in both mods can carry cargo and multiple passengers. Both mods even have cannons that can be placed on boards that you can happily raid and blast the shoreline and everything on it, if that's how you roll. However, where the two differ, they really differ. And so I say, vive la différence! And a heartfelt apology to the entire French-speaking world. I will go over those differences in detail in a minute, but in a nutshell, in small ships, you craft your ships like 99% of the other vehicle mods, and in Nifty ships, you quite literally build your ship and then launch them, and they stay in the game world and never in your inventory. Small ships mod uses a simplified sailing system, which kind of sort of pretends there's wind in the game world, and luckily it is always blowing in the direction you happen to be headed. Nifty Ships has an actual wind mechanism as well as simplified but still fairly realistic sailing mechanics. You're going to have to learn how to sail, including, as Bob Seger would say, against the wind. In small ships, your ship has a fixed number of cannon positions, passenger positions, and inventory space. For Nifty Ships, each ship has a number of compartments that can hold different items depending on your needs. Compartments can be used for storage, passengers, cannons, or workstations. That last bit is important as you can now construct a mobile micro base for remote operations, and we'll see how that works in a moment. But for now, let's start with the ships themselves. At this stage of development, there are just 2 ships to choose from, with at least 4 new ships planned for the near future. Though technically I think we really just have 1 ship at the moment, and that's the sloop. The other ship is really just a new and improved rowboat. However, this is not your vanilla rowboat, not by a long shot. Technically, the new rowboat has 5 compartments. The one in the bow is for the oarsman or oars person, oars entity. The other 4 compartments can be used for entities, storage containers, or workstations. Unfortunately, placing cannons in a rowboat has issues as they tend to sink the rowboat outright. And if you could somehow manage to keep the rowboat afloat with a cannon, firing it will likely tear through the hull of the boat and is probably just as likely to kill the passengers of the rowboat as the intended target. Maybe even more so. So, the mod author and federal regulations have wisely prohibited the use of cannons on rowboats. But right away, you can see how these rowboats have 4 times the cargo or passenger capacity of vanilla rowboats, not to mention the obvious cool factor. Meanwhile, the sloop is bigger, faster, and even cooler. It has 14 compartments, but there's a bunch of nuance around these. For starters, you will notice that there's a cargo net in the middle of the deck, and through that net you can see into the cargo hold of the ship, and within that space there are 6 compartments. However, what you can put into these particular compartments is limited. You can't put cannons or passengers down there, even little ones like cats. I know, I tried. But you can install storage containers and workstations below the deck, and you access them through the cargo net in the deck. Literally through the net. Chests, barrels, shulker boxes, and ender chests all work down there, as will crafting tables, stone cutters, cartography tables, smithing tables, grindstones, looms, furnaces, smokers, blast furnaces, brewing stands, and jukeboxes. In case you were curious, fletching tables, campfires, anvils, enchanting tables, cauldrons, and composters aren't allowed down there, or anywhere else on the ship for that matter. And any liquids need to be kept in 3-ounce containers, and small children need to be accompanied by an adult. On the deck, the sloop has 8 more compartments, and there are 2 in the stern or rear of the ship. And since there are no oars on the ship, and therefore no need for an oars entity, 1 compartment is reserved for the helm's entity, and the other is reserved for another entity, a storage container, or one of the workstations I just mentioned. Just in case you are curious, you can't put a cannon back there. I know, I tried that too. The remaining 6 compartments run in 2 rows of 3 down the sides of the ship, and those can contain all of what I just described and or cannons. So, this gives you a lot of flexibility to configure the ship for your specific needs. If, for example, you are transporting entities around, you can fit 8 entities on board, including the helm's entity, and still have 6 compartments below decks for storage or workstations. If you're carting around your ill-gotten plunder from the New World, then you can fit 13 storage containers on and below decks for a whopping 351 inventory slots. If you're headed for uncharted waters and are expecting danger, you can line the decks with a full battery of 6 cannons with room for 7 containers or workstations, or 6 containers or workstations and another entity. And you can fill those containers with the remains of your enemies after you blast them into cat food with the cannons. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Speaking of other entities, my advice to you is to take a friend with you when traveling in a sloop. Sailing a sloop by yourself is obviously possible, but having help makes it much, much easier, and you are infinitely less likely to ram your ship into something. Trust me when I say this. Don't ask me how I know this, but I will say that I can't go back into town unless and until I'm willing to pay for the damages to the dock, and the house next to the dock, and the house next to that. But anyway, the mod author has made it clear that more ships are on the way, and some of them will be larger. They're also planning for the mod to serve as a platform and API for other folks to design their own vehicle designs for land, sea, and air, and those will use the same compartment system used within this mod. I am personally thrilled by the prospect. So, now you know what kinds of ships you can make and how they can be configured. But if you're anything like me, the question now in your mind is how exactly you can get your land-loving hands on one. Let me just say that the answer is most definitely, it depends. I already made a big deal that you can actually build your ships in this mod, so yeah, you obviously build them. However, learning to build them is part of the Nifty Ships experience. So as you wander around the game world with the Nifty Ships mod installed, you will eventually run across a bit of sandy beach where there will be an unfinished ship. Well, unfinished ship is probably overstating it a bit. You will have a barely started ship, and you will need to finish building it. Now, if you want the full-flavored Nifty ships experience, then you already know all you need to know about building ships for now, and you should skip ahead to the next bit about sailing. I'll wait. If you're still here, then I can only assume that you want to get at the heart of the matter and know, in detail, how to build these beauties from scratch. It all starts with scaffolding, but not just any scaffolding. I mean, the mod brings 2 new scaffolding types to the game, and these are created through shape crafting of plain old Minecraft bamboo scaffolding. The first type of scaffolding is called the slope shipwright scaffolding, and it kind of is shaped like a stairs block. And the other is the flat shipwright scaffolding, and it's shaped like a slab. You will use these to essentially create the basic shape of the hull or body of the ship, and you need to be very careful about how you lay these out. If you do it correctly, then once you have all the necessary bits in place and fill the scaffolding with planks, everything will transform into a proper ship's hull. If you don't, then you'll have a bunch of bamboo and planks laid out on the ground and nothing else to show for it. So what exactly does correctly mean in this case? For a rowboat from the mod, you need only slope scaffolding, and you need to arrange it like so. Corners will merge exactly in the same way as stairs blocks do, but for a sloop, you will need to arrange your scaffolding like this. Slope scaffolding will form the outer edge of the ship, and the flat scaffolding will be used to fill in the bottom of the ship's hull. Now, as I said before, if you have the mod installed, you will eventually find a spot where one of these designs has been started on the beach, and in a nearby container and or building will be some useful bits to help you finish it. Once you have your scaffolding in place for either ship design, now it's time to actually start building the ship. But before we start sawing boards and hammering nails, let me give you some pro tips that I learned the hard way. Historically, and by historically I mean in real life, people have built ships by the water. Not necessarily in the water, but by the water. And when the ship was finished, they usually had a quick and easy way to get the ship from the land and into the water. In this mod, whenever and wherever you build your scaffolding outline of the ship's hull, that's where the finished ship will be. Literally and exactly. Placing these scaffolding bits on dry land is easy and convenient. Getting your completed ship off dry land and into the water is neither easy nor convenient. Pushing it's not going to work. However, pulling with a lead will work if you go slow. Another option is to dig out the ship and let the water fill in around the ship, or use buckets to lift the ship. My personal preference is to actually build a little shipyard with a dock and to set up the scaffolding in that dock, in the water, and thus when the ship is complete, she's already launched. So back to the scaffolding. Now, if you've properly laid out the scaffolding as I've shown you previously, it's time to start filling it in. You're going to need 4 blocks of planks for every piece of scaffolding, and if you're building a sloop, you will also need a bunch more planks after that, as well as a bunch of stripped logs and fences, and all of it has to be the same basic wood type. If you mix and match, things won't work, and you won't know why. So, you'll need to stockpile a ton of wood of a single type for your ship. I would give you exact numbers, but at this point the mod's still in its early phases, and I have no idea how accurate those will be even a week or a month from now. So gather a lot, cut down a whole forest, but also be responsible and replant what you cut down. Take care of the earth and it will take care of you. The more you know. Anyway, once you've completely filled in all the scaffolding with planks of your chosen wood type, you need to transform your hull into the real thing. Now for the rowboats, simply plop an oarlock in the center of each side of the boat. For the sloop, you'll need 4 cleats, one for each side of the corner of the hull. No, that is a cleese. I mean cleats. Well, yes, those are cleats, but not the right ones. I'm talking about the bit on docks and boats that are used to tie on lines of rope. Yes, thank you. At that point, if you're building a rowboat, then you're pretty much done. You just need to make and install a couple of oars, one in each oarlock, and your rowboat is completely functional. However, if you're building a sloop, it should have transformed the hull. But we still have a very long ways to go, and to continue building, look for the floating blue hammer somewhere on the ship. Hover the target over the hammer and it will tell you the type and quantity of resources you will need to complete the next step of the building process. Gather those resources, and with them in your main hand, right-click on the hammer icon and continue until all the material has been added. This will walk you through the construction of the rest of the ship, one bit at a time. So as a new hammer appears on the ship, repeat this process until no new hammer icons appear. If your ship is not in the water, you need to get it there as I described above. But once your ship is in the water, you will immediately notice something interesting. Your ship, or rowboat, drifts. Just like a Baby Ruth candy bar dropped into the pool, these ships float on the surface and can drift from the simulated wind produced by the mod. So, the cleats on the ship's rails, or the anchor we installed on the sloop, aren't just for decoration. They're necessary to make sure your rowboat, or ship, is where you expect it to be when you return to it. And I will explain all of that shortly. But the next thing we need to cover is moving your ship from point A to point B, on purpose. And that requires a brief lesson of real-life sailing. But before I start talking about sailing with sails, let's talk about moving the rowboat. Now, if you know how to move a vanilla rowboat, you know how to move one of these rowboats. Mostly. Where it gets tricky is that the oar's entity position is at the bow of the boat. And when you sit there, you're facing the back of the boat. When you press the W key, the boat moves forward, but since you're facing backwards, it appears that you're moving backwards as well. And just like when you're in the vanilla boat, you can only turn your head up to 90 degrees left and right. Basically, you can't see where you're going, which seems to be true for many of the drivers on the roads where I live as well. So either you stop often to get up and look around for a proper view to make sure you're not going to row into the gaping maw of a giant whale or sea monster, or you occasionally do a donut in the water to give you a 360 degree snapshot of what's going on, or you have a helpful friend sit in the back of the boat where they'll be facing forward so they can tell you if and when you're headed for the aforementioned beastie, or you're about to row right off the edge of the world. Or I suppose you can simply use F5 for the third person view, but frankly, where's the fun in that? Right? So choose whichever option floats your boat, so to speak. And okay, now let's talk about sailing. As the folks in Florida are reminded every year, the wind can blow stuff around, and sometimes it can blow very large things around, and with the right equipment and knowledge, this can be used to advantage to move ships full of people and stuff. And it has been one of the main forms of travel in real life for literally thousands of years. So how does it work? Well, wind is moving air, and when it encounters something, it pushes against it. When that something is large, heavy, and otherwise immovable, such as, say, Mount Everest, then the wind's either stopped or moves around the object. And as you may have noticed, Mount Everest is not going anywhere, at least not by wind power. However, if the object is light enough, the wind will push the object and the object will move. And this is exactly how kites, dandelion seeds, and pollen work. It's also how entire buildings can move in Florida during the hurricane season. In the case of sailing ships, if the sails are furled or put away, the wind blows, but the ship is heavy and the available surface area of the ship for the wind to catch on and push against is not nearly enough for it to actually move the ship, or at least not very fast or very far. However, when the sails are unfurled, it adds radically more surface area for the wind to push against, and with enough sails deployed, even very large and heavy ships can be moved by the wind. The more sails you have working, the more energy you're capturing, and thus the greater the size and speed of the ship you are moving. However, all of this is relative. For one thing, since your ship is being pushed by the wind, you generally can't move faster than the wind itself. If you are moving faster than the wind, then the wind's no longer pushing you. In fact, it's trying to catch up. Another thing is that if the wind is very weak, it may not be strong enough to move the ship at full speed, even with all the sails deployed. And if the wind is really, really weak and the ship is big enough, it may not be enough to move the ship at all. And of course, if there is no wind at all, there's no movement except through things like ocean currents, oars, or tractor beams. Another thing about using wind power to move vehicles like this, the system only works when the wind is blowing in the general direction you want to go. If the wind is in fact blowing in the opposite direction, it will blow you in the same wrong direction unless you understand how to tack and beat into the wind. these are technical sailing terms, and there is a whole lot of physics involved in sailing for which some people actually study and receive advanced degrees. So, to simplify all of that for normal people like you and me, it is possible to sail into the wind, just not directly into it or within about 45 degrees to either side of that, which means that the ship can use the wind to move forward, but mostly across the wind's path. And to get to the desired destination, the course is then set as a dogleg, out and back in, or as a series of zigzags back and forth across the wind to reach the desired location. Obviously, this takes more work and a lot more time than just sailing with the wind directly at your back. Once again, this is like the basics of sailing as printed on the side of a cereal box. If you happen to be an aerospace engineer, then yes, I totally skipped over a bunch of stuff and I abstracted what was left almost to the point of absurdity. But this video is for normal people who play Minecraft and want to get their ship across the sea. It's not a postgraduate course in aerodynamics. So there you are, sitting in your nifty sloop and you want to go somewhere. As we just discussed, the trick to sailing is using the sails. So you'll need to actually walk to the mast of your sloop and you will find an icon to raise the sail. You can do the same thing at the bow of the ship where your front sail, or jib, is stowed. No, that's a bib, which is a device designed to keep your baby clean while they eat, and it rarely works as advertised. Yes, the jib. Thank you. As I was saying, you can raise one or both sails. Raising only the jib will move the ship at a medium clip, and raising the mainsail will move the ship a little faster. Raising both sails means full speed ahead. And if you raise the sails, you just might find yourself doing exactly that, standing on a ship moving full speed without anybody at the helm to steer it. So, turn toward the stern or rear of the ship and jump into the helm's entity position, and you can assume control of the ship. You can turn left or right with the A and D keys, and you can trim the sails with the W and S keys. As a note, you can prevent future unattended jackrabbit starts by making sure that you turn your ship into the wind before you raise the sails. And then you can leisurely stroll to the helm and assume control with little fear of running the ship headlong into something. Another option is to go sailing with a friend. One of you works the sails while the other steers. Add a third friend and they can serve snacks on the voyage. So I mentioned steering into the wind a second ago, and you might be wondering exactly how to do that. Or to be more specific, you might be wondering where exactly to find out where the wind is coming from. A tried and true method is to pick up a handful of dirt or grass and to drop it and see in which direction the wind blows it. Another old technique is to lick your finger and hold it up into the wind to feel which side of your finger gets cooler. Now you can go ahead and do both, but I suggest you use the finger licking option first for obvious reasons. But since this is Minecraft, neither of those will help us here. However, when sitting at the helm of your ship, you will have some new UI in the bottom left corner of your screen, and that lets you know what's going on with the wind. There are 3 indicators. The large circle with the black almond shape in the middle represents your ship and your ship's speed. The small circle with the red needle shows the direction of the wind, and the animated wind graphic above that shows relative wind speed or strength. Or you can just do what I do and look up at your sails and the pennant at the top of the mast and see what the wind's doing with those. It's how real sailors do it. No, I said real sailors. Once you're moving at a pretty good clip, you will find that the ship will want to turn with the wind. And that's because of physics. So you'll need to remain at the helm to keep the ship on course. And when you get to where you need or want to go, you'll need to leave the helm and take down the sails. Now, all of that might seem complicated, but it's actually a gross simplification of sailing a ship. And if you think it might make things kind of complicated and crazy when moving in close spaces, you're right. Have you ever noticed that in the movies, the ship would get relatively close to the shore and then the sailors would use rowboats to actually come to the shore? Yeah, now you know why. Well, that and the fact that the ship could run aground in shallow water. So bring your sloop fairly close to shore, make sure to drop anchor, and then break out a vanilla rowboat, because rowboats from the mod will never fit in your inventory, and then row the final dozen or so blocks to your destination. You can also just jump out and swim for it. I've already talked a bit about the compartments and what you can put into them. However, there is a little nuance to all that. First off, passengers, right? Most entities can be carried on board your ship. Villagers, obviously, mobs, yeah. Basically, most living entities will work, but there is a size limitation, so I doubt you could get the Ender Dragon, the Wither, or even the Warden on board. On the other hand, I would be mighty impressed if you were even able to get far enough with them to actually try it. Once you get an entity locked into a compartment, they will happily ride along with you in your ship wherever you choose to take them. Well, I assume that they're happily riding along, as they never seem to complain. However, hostile mobs will remain hostile and creepers will still explode, so you might want to keep them from boarding in the first place. Quite frankly, creepers should never really make it through the security line in the first place, with or without liquids. If you want to get rid of an unwanted passenger, or if you want them to disembark at your destination, you can easily remove them by holding down left shift and right-clicking on them. This will remove them from the compartment they're currently in, but they're completely free to go right back to where they just were, or any other open and eligible compartment. At that point, it might be useful to have a chest or barrel available to plop down in their old compartment immediately after you eject them, so they don't return to their seat. But getting them off the ship is still subject to all the usual hassles and headaches associated with mob control, so good luck with that. Storage containers installed in compartments act just like they would if you had placed them outside the ship. Picking up a chest or barrel will dump the current contents. Installed ender chests will still ender, and shulker boxes will still shulk. But it's probably the cannons that you've been waiting for. Cannons can only be placed in the compartments that are in a row along both sides of the sloop. There are 6 of those compartments, so you can carry a maximum of 6 cannons. Cannons need to be aimed, loaded, and fired. You can raise or lower the barrel of the cannon, and to do that, right-click to raise the barrel and shift right-click to lower the barrel. The point of this is, again, physics. Raising the barrel aims a shot higher into the air, and so the arc of the fired cannonball will carry it further or over stuff you don't necessarily want to blow up. Likewise, lowering the barrel will dramatically shorten the arc, useful for firing on targets much closer to you. However, you don't want to lower the cannon too much, or else you will create a large crater immediately in front of and probably under the cannon, and quite likely you as well. So take a cue from my alma mater, the US Air Force, and aim high. Once you have the angle of your shot set, equip a cannonball into your main hand and right-click on the cannon. The cannon is now loaded and you're ready to fire. Ignite the fuse with a flint and steel, and after a short but oh so satisfying crackle, your cannon will give an even more satisfying boom, and your cannonball will be flying through the air to deliver your message to its intended recipient. Hopefully. Unfortunately, you can't aim individual cannons left and right. To do that, you need to turn the entire ship, which means returning to the helm, turning the ship, leaving the helm, and firing the cannon. Now, you can't fire the cannons from the helm, and I suppose all of that sounds complicated, and it is, but it's also necessary as your ship will tend to drift and turn in the current and breeze, taking your cannons off target constantly. Now, that might seem like using cannons may not be worth the hassle, but when you consider that cannonballs basically explode with all the power and general lack of finesse of a block of TNT, and that you can fire a full broadside of 3 at a time, yeah, they are worth it. You'll be hard-pressed to find a better solution for separating a crowd of hostile mobs on the shore from their little digital souls than a full cannon broadside from your sloop. And did I mention that you can use these cannons without a ship? Yes, you can mount these babies in your base, on a hill, or pretty much wherever you want. Just keep in mind that if you use this in your base defenses, somebody will eventually need to go clean up all those craters in the yard after the blood and dust settles. With the ability to blow stuff up comes the ability to be blown up. Just as you can wreak havoc on those around you, they can damage your ship and by extension, you. There's no damage meter, but as your ship takes damage, you will start to see cracks in the texture of your ship. You will need to repair her. Repairing the ship is as simple as applying blocks of planks, of whatever wood you use to build the ship. As you approach the hull, you will see a hammer icon appear, and that's when you right-click with the planks in your main hand. Keep doing this until you run out of planks or the icon goes away. Again, it pays to have lots of wood of a given type to create and repair your little ship. If your ship is damaged enough, it impersonates a rock and sinks. However, sunken ships can still be repaired exactly as I just described. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's no clear method or mechanic to get it back out of Davy Jones' locker, but I'm told one's coming soon. However, I assure you that it will require a lot of wood. A lot of wood. As you sail around your Minecraft world, there are a few more things you might want to know about. For example, I talked a bit about anchors and leads before, and if you drop your anchor, it will continue downward until it embeds itself in the sea floor. And at that point, the ship is, well, anchored. However, anchored doesn't mean perfectly still, so your ship will still twist and turn like a sleeping toddler, and it may even drift a little bit here and there. Also, your anchor takes some time to lodge into the seabed. Again, physics. So, if you're in deep water, it'll take a while to anchor, and you just might keep moving until it does. If you're in shallow water, the process is much quicker. When you weigh or reel in the anchor, you can start moving almost immediately as the anchor has left the seabed and will continue to rise while you're free to get underway immediately. As noted, you can attach a lead to your ship by tying the lead to a cleat on the ship itself. You can then tether the other end of the lead to something, and that can be used to tow or tether the ship. However, if you do this with two leads on two cleats of the ship, it will draw the ship in and secure it in place, which makes it much easier to get passengers and cargo on and off the ship, and which generally is how these things work in real life. If you truly love your ship and she has true personality, you can name her. Just grab a name tag and plop it on an anvil to add the desired name to the tag, and then approach the hull of the ship and you'll see a paintbrush icon. Right click with the name tag in your main hand and your ship will now sport nifty little placards on the bow and stern of the ship. If naming your ship's not enough, you can paint the hull and dye the sails. It'll take one die for each of those, and all you need to do is have the die in your main hand and approach the component you want to color. When you see the paintbrush icon, right click and voila! The color's applied. Applying color to sails is an all or nothing proposition. Either you color the entire sail with that color or you don't bother. But the hull is different. We'll apply a theme where the chosen color is the primary color, but there's a design compromise of other colors. This is kind of like using glazed terracotta in vanilla Minecraft. You can also fly a banner from the mast as a flag, but to do that you'll need to climb the mast just like a ladder. As you climb the mast, you will soon see the paintbrush icon on the mast, and with the banner held in your main hand, right click. You can remove the banner by applying a different one or using shears. And just like in the small ships mod, banners are mounted sideways, so your Jolly Roger flag may be less intimidating than you might have intended. I mentioned way back at the beginning of this video that there are structures scattered throughout the game world where scaffolding has already been set up and a ship has been started. For sloops, you can find these on beaches, and for rowboats, you can find these on beaches and along rivers. And yes, there are achievements, including several hidden ones, so I won't go into too much detail here so that you can have fun trying to find them yourself. Finally, there's already a compat for this mod from the same author, so you can enjoy all this nifty goodness, and you can enjoy it using your favorite woods from Biomes O'Plenty. And that kind of forethought and effort is often lacking in some of the bigger and older mods, and yet here it is in a mod that barely has the shrink wrap taken off. That's a heap of awesome right there. And that is Aleki's Nifty Ships mod. As I said up front, this is a brand new mod and very much a work in progress. And so by the time you watch this, some of the bits may have been changed or removed, and all new bits might be in place and thus not mentioned here. However, this is definitely one to watch, and I'm excited to see where this mod goes from here and what kind of future projects this author dreams up. Once this mod reaches its initial release, you can be sure that I'll do another deep dive on the finished product. Now, if you enjoy this mod, please reach out to the mod owner and let them know. It's always good for mod authors to hear that their efforts are appreciated and enjoyed, and perhaps most importantly, actually used. It keeps them going, and of course that means more great mods to choose from in the future. And while you're at it, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others who may appreciate it. After all, you're going to need to assemble your own crew to properly sail these beauties. So until next time, I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and a touch of good fortune. Cheers!